2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to another production of the Government Information Service. My name is Jessie Leonce. This morning, today, Tuesday, September the 29th, 2020, we're coming to you live from the Parliament building in downtown Castries, and that is because today we will be having the convening of the House of Assembly, and we'll be having 5 ministers of government laying papers this morning. Also, 3 motions will be down for consideration, as well as 3 bills being forwarded in the Honorable House for this sitting. In the meantime, we have the parliamentary proceedings scheduled to start at 10 a.m. But in the meantime, I will be bringing you the latest updates from the government of St. Lucia. And in the headlines for this 24-hour news cycle, we have the Prime Minister and the Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs and the Public Service welcoming the decision by financial institutions to offer an extension on moratoriums. Also this morning, we have the Ministry of Health receiving 2 ventilators for the Victoria Respiratory Hospital. That is part of the Carry Secure project, a collaboration of USAID and the UNDP. Also this morning, we're bringing you news of UK carrier TUI beginning its winter weekly direct flights from London Gatwick to the Euro International Airport from November 3rd, 2020. And we're getting this news on the heels of the observance of World Tourism Day that was observed on Sunday. So please take note. And finally, before we go to break, resumption of regular schedule of sexual and reproductive health clinic services at the Castries Wellness Center. So we have the details to these stories and more coming up directly after this break, in the meantime, as we stand by for the proceedings of the House of Assembly to start at 10 a.m. Stay with us.
Sit.
Thank you so much for staying tuned. We've been experiencing some technical difficulties. We do hope that you can bear with us at this time. Of course, we apologize profusely. If you're just joining us, a special good morning to you. We are coming to you live from Parliament building in downtown Castries for the convening of the House of Assembly later on this morning. My name is Jessie Leonce, and coming from the Government Information Service, and we're just going to read to you from the order paper what you can expect for today's proceedings, as well as to bring you the latest news coming from the government of St. Lucia for this 24-hour cycle. Today, the House of Assembly, a sitting of the House of Assembly is scheduled for today, Tuesday, September 29th, 2020, with papers to be laid by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs and the Public Service, the Honorable Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries, Planning, Physical Planning, Natural Resources and Cooperatives, also the Honorable Minister for Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation, the Honorable Minister for Commerce, Industry, Enterprise Development and Consumer Affairs, and the Honorable Minister for Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries. These are the 5 ministers of government who will be laying papers this morning. Parliament will also consider the authorization of the Minister for Finance to borrow an additional sum of US $5 million by way of credit from the International Development Association for capital expenditure for the health system strengthening project, as well as a loan guarantee in the amount of euro 5,750,000 from the European Investment Bank by the St. Lucia Development Bank for on-lending to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. 3 bills are down for consideration, that is credit reporting, companies and intellectual property registry amendment, and the COVID-19 prevention and control bill. And as you would know, you may know, the proclamation for revocation of declaration of state of emergency was issued in an extraordinary gazette earlier this week. That was Monday, September 28th, and the House will be convening today to bring forward the COVID-19 prevention and control bill to hopefully replace the declaration of state of emergency. We continue with news this morning. Prime Minister Honorable Alan Chasney has made an impassioned plea for urgent action by world leaders as countries grapple with the myriad of challenges posed by COVID-19. Honorable Chasney was at the time addressing the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly. In his virtual contribution, the Prime Minister noted that the pandemic's dire consequences on world economies, financial markets, and destabilizing effects on the social and humanitarian standing. As the world looks to recover, Honorable Chasney reminded that small island developing states like St. Lucia are in real danger of not making it. We go to our first clip for the morning.
SIDS are the most indebted, yet we are the least likely to get debt relief or concessional financing. SIDS are the smallest producers of global goods and services, yet we are the most restricted by the rules of international trade. SIDS are the lowest contributors to terrorist financing or banking impropriety, yet we're the most constrained, placed on gray lists and black lists posted all over the world, undermining our reputations. SIDS are the smallest emitters of carbon, yet we're the most affected by climate change. Mr. President, let me point out that all of these paradoxes are man-made. As I have often said, the solution to many of these problems simply requires a stroke of a pen.
Prime Minister Chasney says it is therefore imperative that the international community, governments and financial institutions agree with haste upon a vulnerability index to determine eligibility and accessibility to concessional development assistance.
At meeting upon meeting, all we receive are platitudes and more talk. Meanwhile, the storms and hurricanes, the crises, and the pandemics keep coming regardless. We are disproportionately asked to carry the burden of major shocks, which are caused by actions outside of our own control. With every additional shock, we become more indebted and dependent. And it will soon become impossible for us to survive within these fixed rules that are created without taking into account our exceptional circumstances. Unfortunately, the same obtains with the issue of climate change. For the SIDS, the Paris Agreement, though well-intended, has just not delivered. We understand the world is changing, and as noble of an ideal of eliminating poverty is, we must have greater aspirations of at least a minimum standard of living for all. I've said before, and it's worth repeating, if a family is struggling to survive, if a mother does not know where her children's next meal is coming from, if parents don't have a means to put a roof over their family's head, how are they going to participate or even care about the SDG goals?
In other news this morning, UK carrier TUI Airways begins its winter weekly direct flight from London Gatwick to Uranon International Airport from November 3rd, 2020. Along with the 4 British Airways flights, the Tuesday departure increases ease of access from the United Kingdom with 5 flights per week. This comes at a time when St. Lucia has been commended as one of the safest destinations for winter sun due to recording the lowest COVID rates in the Caribbean region. The island has welcomed more than 8,500 visitors since reopening at the beginning of June, with the UK figures growing as confidence increases and airfares are attractively competitive. TUI flights are available from £440 in November. So please take note of this development. New forms. We continue with news. St. Lucia is commemorating World Tourism Day with a week of activities that commenced on September 27th. That was this past Sunday. The annual global observance is aimed to foster awareness among the international community of the importance of tourism and its social, cultural, political, and economic value. Minister for Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and the Creative Industries, Honorable Dominic Fede, in a national address on Sunday, dedicated this year's celebration to tourism hospitality workers. COVID-19, the tourism minister said, has destabilized the industry. However, he assured that government is working toward not just ensuring a safe reopening, but supporting the rebound.
Many hotels, car rental companies remain unviable, and thousands of tourism jobs are still in the flux. But every visitor, every new flight, and every day that a hotel reopens present us with boundless opportunities. I pay tribute to the many thousands of tourism employees, those impacted negatively by the pandemic, ancillary service providers, and hospitality students across the island. You have demonstrated much tenacity and perseverance by surviving the impact of COVID's destruction of the industry.
The theme for this year's World Tourism Day is Tourism and Rural Development. It seeks to celebrate the unique role that tourism plays in providing opportunities outside of big cities and preserving cultural and natural heritage all around the world. It is a theme not only embraced by the government of St. Lucia, but is receiving action. At the sitting of the House of Assembly this morning, parliamentarians will consider a motion to authorize the Minister for Finance to borrow an amount of US $3,750,000 from the CARICOM Development Fund for the purpose of providing financial assistance to support the implementation of the Village Tourism Initiative by enhancing specified infrastructure and supporting eligible small and medium-sized enterprises. The Director of Product Development at the St. Lucia Tourism Authority elaborates on the importance of village tourism. We now go to a clip from Ms. Anne Morgan.
Working with the communities and ensuring that we develop a product that highlights the experiences that really preserve their traditional activities. And for us, we are engaging in new products through community projects, which looks at Choiseul, as we look at working with a few artisans in developing a craft tour. There are also a number of projects that we intend to look at within the community, focusing in dough fair and canneries. So by undertaking these kinds of projects, we ensure that there is not only involvement by the community, but also there is ownership of the product. And also the livelihoods of those communities are enhanced, because we want to ensure that they don't only participate in the sector, but they are also owners of the product. So by doing so, we ensure that not only they provide employment opportunities, but also that their livelihoods are sustained, that they have a better living standard, a standard of living.
The week of activities commemorating World Tourism Day includes a market walk through by the minister and tourism officials, a tree planting exercise, as well as various media appearances. We now shift to health. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has received the donation of ventilators from the Carry Secure project. We have a report on a handover ceremony that took place recently. The Ministry of Health and Wellness now has 2 additional medical ventilators to better equip the Victoria Respiratory Hospital, which was recently transformed to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Delivery of the machines was possible through the leadership of the St. Lucia government, the generous financial support of the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, and the backing of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. In a recent handover ceremony, Minister for Health and Wellness Senator the Honourable Mary Isaac showed appreciation for the highly specialized equipment.
As we continue to prepare our respiratory hospital, these ventilators are a welcomed addition to the much-needed supplies that are required to equip the facility. We are very grateful that these gifts are being donated to us at a time when revenue is almost non-existent. Our mainstay revenue-generating activity, tourism, has diminished to an all-time low, while we continue to sustain our economy in spite of all these challenges. On that note, allow me to express once again our heartfelt gratitude to the India-UN Development Partnership Fund.
The India-UN Development Partnership Fund, through South-South Cooperation, has provided the 2 ventilators as part of a $1 million project for the island titled Human Security and Sustainable Development, a COVID-19 Response in St. Lucia. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, is the implementing agency. Miguel Trim, National Officer for St. Lucia under the Carry Secure project, represented the UNDP for the handover.
These activities are part of the UNDP COVID-19 recovery program for the Eastern Caribbean that is focused on promoting resilient health systems to respond to the pandemic, in addition to health procurement support, assessing and addressing the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19, and managing the crisis through a multi-sectoral response framework, including assistance for the reopening of the economy.
According to Trim, these activities also complement other ongoing collaborations between UNDP and the Government of St. Lucia in areas related to citizen security through the Carry Secure project and the environment through the Jeff Small Grants program. The ventilators are just the first delivery in a larger procurement effort for St. Lucia.
In the near future, we will see additional personal protective equipment, including gowns, face shields, face goggles, and hazmat suits, landing in St. Lucia to support national efforts to fight the second wave of COVID-19.
Included in the India-UN Development Partnership Fund through South-South Cooperation project for St. Lucia's response to COVID-19 is a World Food Programme-supported cash transfer initiative to address the socio-economic impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable households in St. Lucia and in expanding the public assistance program. These ventures are government-led. For the Government Information Service, I am Jessie Leonce reporting. We continue with news updates this morning, still on the subject of health. Resumption of regular schedule of sexual and reproductive health clinic services at the Castries Wellness Center. The Department of Health and Wellness, I'm reading from a press release from the department, they informed the public of the resumption of regularly scheduled sexual and reproductive health clinic services at the Castries Wellness Center from Tuesday, October 6, 2020. The sexual and reproductive health clinic services will be available from Mondays to Thursdays from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., with emergency services on Friday mornings from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. The public is reminded that the dermatology clinic services are still available at the Castries Wellness Center on Wednesdays from 8 a.m. Also, sexual and reproductive health clinic services at the Viewfort Wellness Center will continue every Tuesday from 8 a.m. The Department of Health and Wellness thanks the public for their patience during the period of limited schedule of services at the Sexual and Reproductive Health Clinic. So that rounds up the updates that we have for you from the Department of Health and Wellness. We continue on the subject of moratoriums. Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Honorable Alan Chastney, welcomes the decision by financial institutions to offer an extension of moratoriums to support customers during this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. In a joint media release by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, and the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECCU, dated 23rd September 2020, the regional institutions noted that although most of our member countries are beginning to reopen their borders utilizing a phased approach, the pandemic continues to negatively impact individuals and businesses across the region. The ECCB supports the ECCU Bankers Association extension of the current moratorium to as much as 12 months where considered necessary. Prime Minister Chastney has also encouraged financial institutions, that is banks, insurance companies, to come together to support customers who have not only lost their jobs, but businesses who are affected by the general slowdown of economic activity. In April, the Social Stabilization Program was announced to the nation by the Prime Minister, which listed several economic relief programs and initiatives to help cushion citizens from the economic fallout. Tax relief in the form of waivers on penalties and fees, NIC support, an economic relief program, and a national feeding program were just a few of these initiatives. Extension of the moratoriums will be on a client-per-client basis, and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the ECCU Bankers Association encourages St. Lucians with loan commitments to reach out to their relevant financial institutions to be considered for the moratorium. And now we have a statement from the Bankers Association of St. Lucia. They did indicate during an interview during yesterday's morning brew that any applications for extended moratoriums on credit facilities will be subject to scrutiny. This advisory again being issued by the Bankers Association of St. Lucia. Moratoriums of up to 6 months were initially introduced as a COVID-19 response to support economically vulnerable persons and businesses. All banks and other licensed financial institutions offered this deferment in one form or another at the discretion of the customer. A Scotiabank Country Manager and Public Relations Officer of the Bankers Association of St. Lucia, Mr. Gordon Julian, indicates that going forward, customers will have to convince banks of their predicaments.
The first round of the moratorium, which went for about 6 months, I think in most cases, most persons, whether they really needed it or not, they took it. So you had a situation where banks didn't really necessarily vet and say, well, okay, you can afford to pay, you not afford to pay. Once you requested it, for the most part, you got it. The next round of moratorium that's going to be extended, there's expectation that the bank's going to be, it's going to be a more rigorous exercise.
There'll be scrutiny.
There'll be more scrutiny. So for example, persons will have to demonstrate that there was actually a loss of income and that kind of thing. There'll be more robust discussions between the banks and the individuals in determining the extent of the moratorium that's going to be granted.
The Bankers Association of St. Lucia appeals to clients to consider the implications of the moratoriums on their accounts. It hopes that customers who opted for a moratorium capitalized on any additional cash flow they may have come into during this relief period.
You would have now had some funds of money, some pool of funds that you didn't have to pay to the bank. Are you making the most effective use of that cash flow? Or are you just squandering it? Right? Because it's really to provide liquidity support for the essential things, to put food on your table, to meet medical expenses that you couldn't, for businesses to continue to sustain your business and that type of thing. Really to put it into good use, so that at the end of the day, even if you deferred on your payment, you still made good, wise, sound decisions and good utilization of that additional liquidity that's going to help you in the long run.
At the end of June this year, the extent of liquidity support offered by the local banking sector in moratoria was valued as $1.5 billion. And we're wrapping up with this morning's updates before the commencement of the House of Assembly proceedings with this final story. Government's efforts to advance the integration of technology in the classroom is being boosted through the Pro Futuro Technology in Education program. It is an initiative of the Pro Futuro Foundation, spearheaded in Spain and implemented in the Latin America and Caribbean region with support by the Organization of American States, OAS. A pilot phase of the Pro Futuro program is being rolled out here in St. Lucia by the Department of Education and Innovation. 12 participating schools have received a consignment of tablet devices, laptops, and other digital learning equipment to aid classroom instruction and assessment. Education officials embarked on a 3-day school visit on September 21st, 2020 to assess the impact of the program so far. Curriculum Officer for Technology Integration, Mr. Jermaine Anthony, spoke with Chris Satney, Communications Officer in the Ministry of Education, Innovation, Gender Relations and Sustainable Development. We go to that clip with Mr. Jermaine Anthony.
Teachers have been trained in a lot of the ICT pedagogies in terms of using technological platforms, using digital content, using the equipment. And in addition to that, there's a lot of leadership training, innovation training that teachers have been able to take advantage of, so that their whole level of comfort and confidence in using other technologies have improved.
So tell us about the tour and the involvement of the OAS.
This week we are visiting all 12 schools under the pilot, and we are providing support along, as part of the visits. And there are 3 things we're focusing on, which is the upcoming training for the coaches who have been trained in the schools. That training will focus on the practical uses of the equipment itself. We're also giving the schools some feedback on how their teachers have performed in the online training that has taken place so far. And we're also gathering an assessment of, from the schools' point of view, how they believe the program could be best sustained in the schools, any challenges they envisage or they've encountered so far. And we're looking really to see how we can support the schools. So as we are monitoring, but we are also supporting the development and the progress of the program in the schools.
So from this point, as far as the tour is concerned, what would be the next step?
Well, the next step really is to see I hope the prolific use of the Pro Futuro tablets and laptop in the classroom. So we are already setting the expectation by the next set of school visits a month from now. We will have actually sample lessons where we come to the classroom to see the equipment in use, to see the teachers using the devices, to see the students engage with them. As some schools have already started, but we hope to see this time when we come around again to see everybody making use of the devices and the content that also comes with the solution.
So devices have been distributed to all the schools?
So devices in terms of tablets and a content server laptop, as well as a mini projector, all this equipment has been already supplied to the schools. They also come with a carrying case that allows the teacher to wheel all the devices to their classroom or whatever setting they want to use the devices at.
Well, with that, we conclude the latest updates coming from the government of St. Lucia. Just to go over the headlines for you, the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance welcomes the decision by financial institutions to offer an extension on moratoriums. Also, the Ministry of Health and Wellness received 2 ventilators for the Victoria Respiratory Hospital. And we have an update on the resumption of regular schedule of sexual and reproductive health clinic service at the Castries Wellness Centre. Also in the news, UK carrier TUI begins its winter weekly direct flights from London Gatwick to Uranora International Airport from November 3rd, 2020. If you're just joining us, a special good morning to you. We are coming to you live from downtown Castries, the Parliament building, because there will be a convening of the House of Assembly today. Let me just read from the press release from the Office of the Prime Minister. Sitting of the House of Assembly is scheduled for today, Tuesday, September 29th, 2020, with papers to be laid by 5 ministers of government, that is the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth,